Hello friends, have you ever wondered what is the true agent for change? Today I want to speak about that, but more importantly, I want to bring this into my realm, which is the realm of nutrition and fitness. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my story in order to illustrate this point really, really well. Because I'm in the business of change, people constantly ask me, what is the thing needed in order for me to change, in order for me to make these nutrition concepts, these movement concepts, a sustainable lifestyle? So I want to bring you back to the idea that I truly believe that the mind is the battlefield. That is right. It is the mind that plays the tricks on us. There's a lot of our belief systems that really hold us back from experiencing our true potential. You see, I grew up in a family in an environment that didn't give me the best belief system. And that was sort of delayed for a little while because I played soccer, and I also believe that my soccer career was sort of affected by a lot of those belief systems. I didn't believe in myself. I had very low self-esteem. And with all that, I still made it into competitive soccer, and I did some pretty incredible things. I wonder what would have happened if those belief systems were different. The story would have probably been very different at the end of my career. But the truth is, those belief systems really impacted me after soccer ended for me. So at the age of 24, at a very young age, my career ends. I'm having to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I come back to the States. I ended up for 6-7 months in 𝗵𝗵, Florida. And I always have had these elevator encounters that are interesting. I was in Miami and I was living in this apartment complex, and I would see a guy come in all the time. And I just knew by the way he talked and the way he moved that he was a stoner. He was always stoned out of his mind. And he was super nice. He would always engage me and say hello, and he was positive. And I would always see him with a book right under his arm. Like, he always had this book. And it just amazed me that here's this guy who's stoned, and he was constantly reading. And yet at the time, I had never even read a book. I mean, I hadn't even read instructions on a manual before, right? It wasn't my thing. I was an athlete. I was more attuned with the physical aspects of life. And so I was intrigued by this book. And so sure enough, one day I said, hey man, what are you reading? And in his whole stoner way, he said, oh man, this book is going to change your life, brother. He says, you have a week to read it. And he handed me this book you see right here, right? And so he handed me this book, pretty thick book, about 400 plus pages. He gave me a week to read it. I had never read a book. I said, I'm never going to get through this book. Well, I read the first couple of pages of this book, and I was going through a lot of depression because I was just coming out of playing soccer. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And that book on personal development actually gave me a desire again to engage in life, to be passionate about something. I read through the book in a week. I handed it back to him, and I felt like a changed man. I felt like I had seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and I just had this thing in my mind where I wanted to do better, right? At that point, it was just kind of all materialistic things. I wanted to do better than I had done with soccer. So that was my goal. My goal was to really just excel in my finances, and I wanted to buy a certain car and live a certain way. And so I kind of did that for 10 years, and I applied all of these concepts. I continued to excel and read books on personal development. I got really immersed in the world of personal development. And the thing that personal development did for me was it actually shifted my mindset, because remember, I truly believe that the mind is the battlefield. And so with these new belief systems, I started to take some actions, and these actions started to produce some results in my life. But I was always very disappointed with the world of personal development because I felt like it was a rinse and wash and rinse sort of situation where I would always have to go back and get some more motivation and go to another conference or read another book. And it was just kind of this perpetual cycle. And I couldn't get to the change that I was looking for, that sustainable change. It was very difficult. And even though I was doing well financially, material things were coming. I was living in the house I wanted to live. I was driving. I had 2 of my favorite cars that I always dreamed of parked outside my house. And I was dating a girl at the time that I thought I was going to marry, and her father was a well-known physician in town. And so I had sort of out there, and I had my own thing going, and I had influence. Everything, quote unquote, was happening for me. But yet I was living a very incongruent life because my belief systems were still flawed. I was still carrying a lot of the traumas and ideas from my childhood. I was covering it up with muscles at this point. I was working out. I was looking a certain way. I was driving the car I wanted to drive. All those things that I thought, or people at least told me would fulfill me. And yet, in my alone time, I felt empty. I felt the void. I constantly felt like, is this all there is to life? It was very, very disappointing because people had said to me that if I achieved all these things, then and only then would I be happy. But here I was, quote unquote, I had arrived. I had reached all these goals, all these financial milestones that I wanted to reach, and yet I was still unhappy. And so, of course, my second book encounter in an elevator happened. There was a gentleman that was living in my building at the time, and interestingly enough, I would bump into him on Saturdays. He was on his way back from church with a Bible under his arm, just like this. And it was just really intriguing to me because he was a young, good-looking dude. He had a beautiful wife, and it was Saturday, which was like, that was my Super Bowl, right? That was the day that I would go out and get faded into the night, and all week I looked forward to this day, and it was kind of my way of releasing from all the responsibilities and all the things that I had going on. It was my way of blowing steam, as they say. And this guy, it was 8 o'clock at night. I was on my way out and he was on his way back already to go to bed. And I was just shocked with a Bible on there. So I would mess with him all the time and tell him to put that thing down and, let's go out party and do our thing. And he would just giggle and say, I left that lifestyle behind a long time ago and I've never looked back. I was just super, super intrigued. And so at that point in my life, I had a lot of incongruencies, a lot of false belief systems that were leading me to do some things that were really breaking me, right? I'm going to make it very short, but I ended up with a heart situation. I ended up with a atrial fibrillation, a flutter in my heart based on the lifestyle I was living. And that spiraled into a lot of different issues. The girl I was dating, she got up and left me a couple weeks later. She was dating another guy in St. John's, having the time of her life. And here I was, actually, I woke up one morning and I was rushed to the emergency room because of my heart condition. And I had hit rock bottom. And I'm glad that actually happened because hitting rock bottom actually allowed me to confront a lot of those belief systems that were leading me in this direction. I didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. I had a lot of blind spots. I knew things were happening. I didn't understand why. And so I started to really question a lot of things in life. I got to the point where I wanted to take my life. And that encounter that day with that gentleman in the elevator that actually shared his Bible with me, he said, do you want to come to church? I ended up taking him up on that. I went to church and I remember coming back from church and unwrapping a Bible just like this. And I picked it up. I had picked one up many, many times before, and I had got really frustrated and thrown it across the room because I was like, I can't understand anything that says. It doesn't make any sense. Why do people say that this is so powerful and yet I can't read it? Well, once I had that initial encounter and I started to read through it for the very first time, I started to understand and it started to do something very different to my mind. Not having context, not having anyone to guide me through it, I just opened it and I started to understand. And something really, really interesting happened because I realized that the world of personal development, the book, that first elevator encounter with the world of personal development, which the basis of personal development is humanism, right? Humanism says that if you have enough time, enough money, you can make anything happen. In other words, you're your own God and you can make things happen. I realized that that wasn't true because even though I had the concepts down and I had that circle of influence that was also very immersed in the world of personal development, my life was still very incongruent with who I really wanted to be. And so it was very different when I started to read and my mind started to wake up to certain things. I started to see things. I started to have discernment over situations that I had never had before. But the first thing that had to change was my mindset. And that's what was being renewed. So as I renewed my mindset, something real interesting happened. Those emotions, that turmoil that I constantly had in my heart, and that I was constantly crying and I constantly felt alone and I constantly felt like I had this sort of imposter syndrome, and all these things started to fade away because my mindset changed. And when my mindset changed, it changed my emotions. My emotional life changed. I was actually able to take different actions, right? Different steps in my life. Some of those steps were really, really getting rid of my circle of influence, which at the time was very toxic, right? I loved those people, but I realized that those people weren't adding anything to my life. So I had to move away from those people. And so I did that. I moved away from them. I deleted over 300 numbers out of my cell phone of people that just weren't contributing to this new lifestyle. And it was painful. It was very, very painful. I took a 2-year sabbatical from work because I was trying to understand all these things that were happening to me. And I started to take different actions. So I was thinking different. I was feeling different. I was acting different. And this really started to shape my habits. I started to see more consistency in all areas of my life, including the one area that I had always mastered, my physiology, okay? My body. I was noticing that I no longer had to go on these sort of 3-month lean out sessions, and where I was, doing a bunch of cardio and depleting a bunch of carbs and doing things of that nature. I just had a consistency. I started to get stronger physically as a byproduct of a lot of my habits changing. I wasn't going out. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't staying out. I had cut off all my vices, and it was incredibly powerful how just changing my mind changed my emotions, which changed my habits, which then, of course, impacted my character. And that was about 13, 14 years ago. And so why do I tell you this story? Why did I take my time to tell you this story? I tell you that if you're alive, if you have air still coming through your lungs and blood running through your veins, in other words, you're still alive, there are some things that you're trying to bring to fruition. Let's talk about my realm. I know most people battle with their nutrition. I know most people battle with making exercise something consistent in their lives. And I am convinced that the reason that is true for you is not because you're flawed, not because you have a lack of discipline, not because you don't know what to do, because we have plenty of information out there. It's simply that the way you're thinking about these things is not allowing you to feel a certain way, which then allows you to take actions, create habits, and of course, create a character around this thing that you're trying to bring to fruition. And so once again, the mind is the battlefield. In order for you to truly master any of these concepts, the first thing that needs to change is your mind. Your mind must be renewed and transformed. So then the question becomes, well, how do I do that? Well, I truly believe that when I talk to people, especially around nutrition, people have a lot of faulty ideas around nutrition. There's a lot of false information out there. There's too much information, too many gurus, too confusing. And I'm here to say that you would probably agree that some of the most powerful things in life are the most simple things, right? We have a tendency to see complex things and think that that is the thing that's going to take us to the next level. And just like nutrition concepts, exercise concepts, and life concepts, the things that bring the biggest return on investment are always the most simple things. I want to say this. I know for me, the thing that basically renews my mind on a daily basis is the ability to walk through my Bible every day, right? I'm reading it first thing in the morning. Sometimes there are things in there that I don't understand, but I'm constantly being seeped in those concepts. And from there, I have created a biblical filter for everything I do in life. And whether you are on the other side of this and you don't believe in that, you think it's an archaic book and there's a lot of misinterpretations in there, whatever you want to think, the question you need to ask yourself is what you're doing now working for you? I know for me, it's working. And so I continue to do that. I continue to renew my mind through that. Activating your physiology, which is such an important part, right? If you are living a sedentary life, you're living at half, not less than half of your potential, because activating your physiology will create emotions. You've heard it. Motion creates emotion, right? Activating your physiology is so important. I'm not talking about weightlifting. I'm talking about just activating, getting your breathing for you to breathe from your diaphragm. All these things are incredibly important. So renew your mind, activate your physiology, bring the right nutrients in so that you can fuel your body with things that are actually going to give you mental acuity, that are going to give you stability in your insulin, which then of course is going to help you in your emotions. And so I'm here to say that in order for any kind of change to happen, you must renew your mind. You must think so that you can feel, so that you can act, so that it can impact your habits. Those habits are good, impact your character, and your life will be radically different. So if you're on the other side and you battle with a bunch of yo-yo diets, it's not the diets you've been on, it's not the coaches you worked with, it's not the training, it's not that you're flawed, it's not that you're not disciplined. It's simply that you have not changed your mind and your belief systems are not helping you in achieving those things. And so if you want to bring those things to fruition, my friend, I can tell you right now that that is the number one thing I would do, is make sure that I'm looking at my belief systems, my filters. And if those aren't serving you, my friend, then you have to take a quick turn and start to think very different and renew your mind on a daily basis. And that will radically transform your life. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. These are the things I enjoy speaking about, things that edify the mind, the body, and the spirit. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you're going to love this video here. Check it out. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.